glaciers? Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about the Russia-Ukraine war. A top Russian general has been killed. Ukraine has claimed responsibility. The question remains, what will Vladimir Putin's revenge look like? With Russia warning the NATO of war, is this going to be a turning point in the nearly 3-year-long war? What lies ahead? What happens next? Stay with us as we join the dots and get you the bigger picture. Meanwhile, here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show. Is it time for the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to call it time up? Will he survive this latest test after the Deputy Prime Minister stepped down? Also, what does the latest jolt mean for him, for his future, and for the people of Canada? Iran has paused the implementation of the highly controversial hijab and chastity law. It's a sudden pause and extremely significant. We get you the complete story, along with what's happening on the ground. This and more coming up. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about Russia. A top Russian general has been killed in Moscow and Ukraine has claimed responsibility. Another senior Russian, Mikhail Shatsky, a weapons expert, was killed just last week. And the big question is hanging in the air. How will Russia respond really? Has Ukraine, in desperation, escalated the conflict into total war? Will Russia target senior figures in the Ukraine government and military? What happens from here onwards? Russia has always been ready for a larger war with NATO. It has now, in fact, threatened to prepare for a war with NATO. How severe will be Moscow's response? In a parallel development, Russia has developed the capacity to cut Ukraine's link with its crucial Starlink satellites, which could have enormous consequences on its battlefield performance. But before that, details of the general's killing, which Russians are calling terrorism. Let me just break this up. It's a startling and complex story with lots of layers of developments and details that are not widely known. A senior Russian general, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, was killed in a bomb blast in Moscow less than a day earlier. Ukraine accused him of ordering chemical weapon attacks on its troops. The explosion occurred outside his home, about 7 kilometers from the Kremlin, killing Kirillov and his assistant. Investigators suggesting a bomb hidden on a scooter detonated as Kirillov prepared to leave for work. Moscow state media reporting the bomb contained up to 300 grams of TNT equivalent. Both men reportedly died even before medical help arrived. Ukraine's intelligence service, the SBU, has claimed responsibility. A source within the agency told Reuters that Kirillov was considered a war criminal and a legitimate target. But what does his death mean for the already volatile situation between Russia and Ukraine is the immediate question that arises. You see, Kirillov was a senior figure in Russia's chemical and biological defense forces. In fact, he faced accusations from Ukraine of ordering nearly 5,000 chemical weapon attacks. These allegedly included the use of K-1 grenades containing toxic irritants. But just a month ago, Kirillov, in fact, accused Ukraine of using cluster munitions laced with chlorine in the Kursk region. This is the highest profile assassination of a Russian military official in Moscow since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. That's how significant this development is, and follows the killing of Mikhail Shatsky, a weapons expert, shot dead just last week outside Moscow by a suspected Ukrainian assassin. The question is, are we witnessing a coordinated Ukrainian campaign targeting Russia's military elite? The Kremlin has remained silent so far, but the implications are massive. Meanwhile, the Russian defense minister has said that Russia must prepare for war with NATO. You heard that right. As well as complete its war against Ukraine. Belousov made those comments before the Russian Defense Ministry in Moscow on Monday. In a joint meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, Belousov told the Defense Ministry they must prepare for war with NATO within the next decade. He attributed the decisions taken by NATO against Russia during its summit in Washington, D.C. in July. In a nutshell, all 32 member states of NATO approved a declaration that primarily involved providing support for Ukraine against Russia in the war and condemning countries that supported Russia during the conflict. Belousov also said that Russian forces are gaining massive ground in Ukraine, citing advances across multiple fronts.
This year, Russian troops have liberated almost 4,500 square kilometers of territory occupied by the enemy. They control less than 1% of the territory of the Luhansk People's Republic and still around 25 to 30% of the Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporozhye regions. The average daily progression has now accelerated considerably, and we are now gaining around 30 square kilometers a day.
In fact, Belousov also highlighted that Russia has recruited over 427,000 troops this year, which, by the way, is an average of 1,200 troops a day. 1,200 a day. At the same meeting, Putin also blamed NATO for escalating tensions. He pointed to increased Western military spending and the presence of over 100,000 US troops in Europe. But most importantly, Putin said that Russia needs to launch serial production of various Russian systems, specifically mentioning the Oreshnik ballistic missile first used against Ukraine last month.
We must organize serial production of such systems like Oreshnik in the near future to ensure security of Russia and our allies, and it undoubtedly will be done.
Amid these developments, Russia's military has unveiled the Kalinka monitoring system. What is that? Basically, a tool capable of detecting and targeting drones using satellite systems like Elon Musk's Starlink. You see, Ukraine has relied heavily on Starlink for battlefield cooperation and drone operations. We've been telling you about this. As per reports, Kalinka can detect aerial and maritime drones up to 15 kilometers away, potentially disrupting Ukraine's drone strikes. Reportedly, it could even neutralize Starlink's militarized version, Star Shield. Starlink has been reportedly vital for Ukraine since the war started in 2022. It has enabled encrypted communications, coordinated drone strikes, and provided real-time battlefield intelligence. Without it, Ukraine's ability to counter Russian advances could significantly suffer. So could this new system give Russia a significant technological edge? Could it prove to be a game changer? And just how soon will Russia be able to introduce this system? How will Ukraine now rethink its strategies, if at all? These questions highlight the precarious state between Russia and Ukraine. If Russia prepares for conflict with NATO, what will this mean for Europe and the world? And as Ukraine ramps up its targeted strikes, will this provoke Russia into more drastic measures? Will it lead to broader implications? NATO allies have supported Ukraine with billions in aid and advanced weaponry. But as the stakes continue to mount, how far are they willing to go? Could a direct conflict between NATO and Russia become absolutely unavoidable? At this moment of great uncertainty, there are, unfortunately, more questions than answers. US President-elect Donald Trump, meanwhile, appears to be operating in an overdrive as he prepares for his January inauguration. Following his appointments of family members and close associates to key positions, a move some are calling the March of the Trump family, he is now fully embracing the power that comes with his new role, enjoying the perks without really facing the responsibilities as of now. In fact, some say Trump is running a parallel White House. You see, since his victory in last month's US presidential election, Trump has been a lot more in the spotlight as compared to Joe Biden, making it rather easy to mistake him for the current president. He has taken charge of shaping future foreign policy, dominating world leaders during a trip to Paris, and attracted tech moguls eager to pay their respects. In the latest, in a press conference at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, Trump said Turkey is a key player in Syria's future and that it will hold the key to what happens in Syria, where rebels toppled the government of Bashar al-Assad early this month.
Nobody knows what the final outcome is going to be in the region. You know, nobody knows who really the final. I believe it's Turkey, and I think Turkey is very smart. He's a very smart guy, and he's very tough. But Turkey did an unfriendly takeover without a lot of lives being lost. I can say that Assad was a butcher. What he did to children.
President-elect Donald Trump, in fact, said he had a very good talk with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu regarding the ongoing war in Gaza. Trump reiterated his warning that all hell is going to break loose if Hamas fails to release its hostages by January 20th. What's happening that day? The day he assumes office.
On Bibi, we had a very good talk. We discussed what is going to happen, and I'll be very available on January 20th, and we'll see. As you know, I gave warning that if these hostages aren't back home by that date, all hell's going to break out, and very strong. Well, they're going to have to determine what that means. But it means it won't be pleasant. It's not going to be pleasant, yeah.
The US president-elect, in fact, also set the ball rolling to address the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump stated that he would speak with the Russian President Putin and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about efforts to bring the conflict to an end. However, he did not give a direct answer when asked if he believed that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia as part of a negotiated settlement.
What should Zelensky, if anything, be prepared to give up to ask?
We would be prepared to make a deal. That's all. Got to be a deal. No, got to be a deal. Too many people being killed. That is a war that's hard. Too many people. Got to make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal. What deal would you take away? Yeah. Has to make a deal. And Putin would have never gotten it if I was president.
Trump's focus extended beyond the two ongoing wars, as he also had a few words to say about the Chinese-owned social media app TikTok. Earlier this year, remember, President Biden signed a bill requiring TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to sell the app by January 19.
Go look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points. And there are those that say that TikTok has something to do with it.
Trump is clearly enjoying himself, but the question still remains, for how long will the good times last? Once he takes office and steps out of his post-victory bubble and the euphoria, harsh reality of a divided and rather dangerous geopolitical situation may hit him hard. For now, however, the US president-elect can still continue to dream. Shifting focus for now, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval arrived in Beijing for the new edition of India and China Special Representatives Dialogue. The talks aimed at restoring bilateral ties stalled for over 5 years. NSC Doval will meet the Chinese foreign minister as part of the 23rd meeting of special representatives. The last round of special representatives dialogue took place in New Delhi in December 2019. The decision to revive the dialogue mechanism, remember, was taken at a meeting between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Kazan. Ahead of the talks, India's External Affairs Ministry has said that the two special representatives will be discussing the management of peace and tranquility in the border areas and explore a fair, reasonable and mutually acceptable solution to the boundary question. Meanwhile, China said that it is willing to work with India to stabilize bilateral relations at an early due date.
愿同印方一道，落实好两国领导人重要共识，相互尊重彼此的核心利益和重大关切，通过对话沟通增进互信，秉持诚意、诚信，妥处分歧，推动两国关系早日重回稳定健康的发展轨道。
There was no special representative dialogue in the last 5 years. Given the eastern Ladakh border route, the military standoff along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh started in May 2020, remember. And a deadly clash at the Galwan Valley in June that year resulted in a severe strain in ties between the two sides. Both the countries completed the disengagement process from the last two friction points of Demchok and Depsang in Ladakh under an agreement finalized in October this year. The agreement was finalized just days before the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan. On to Bangladesh now. Just yesterday, that's the 16th of December, Bangladesh celebrated its 54th Victory Day, also known as Bijoy Divas. It's a day of a lot of significance for Bangladeshis as it marked the emergence of sovereign Bangladesh in 1971. But not just Bangladesh. Every year, this day is celebrated by India as well for its role in the liberation war. But what is known to be shared history has now reportedly transformed into a political tussle. After several leaders of the Mohammad Yunus-led interim government in Bangladesh on Monday said that the victory of 1971 belonged to Bangladesh alone and India was merely an ally in the struggle. Tonight, we are asking this question: how far is this from the truth? Rather, what are the facts? Let's just break it all down for you. On Monday, Prime Minister Modi shared a social media post commemorating those who contributed to India's historic victory in 1971. The post did not have any mention of Bangladesh, and not just now, earlier as well, Prime Minister Modi had not mentioned Bangladesh in the post that he made on Vijay Diwas. Take, for example, this tweet from 2023. Then what really changed this time around that drew sharp reactions from political leaders in Bangladesh? What really happened? Yunus's law advisor, Asif Nazrul, and student leader Hasnat Abdullah, and a member of Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP, criticized Prime Minister Modi for not mentioning their country in his social media post. What's more, one of the student leaders presented the Prime Minister's message as a direct threat to Bangladesh's independence and territorial integrity. Not just that, this drew comments from several other politicians on social media, such as Ishraq Hussain of the BNP, who condemned Prime Minister Modi's remarks as being disrespectful to the martyrs who fought in the war. He also called it a move that could harm bilateral ties between the two countries. Speaking to Bangladeshi publication, Salahuddin Ahmad, a member of the BNP Standing Committee, expressed his discontent over Prime Minister Modi's post. You see, as per reports, the reactions from Bangladeshi leaders coming amid unprecedented tensions between the two sides. This even as India repeatedly has raised concern with the Yunus-led caretaker administration over attacks on Bangladesh's Hindu minorities, which intensified. In fact, coming back to what the Bangladeshi leaders seem to have claimed about India being a mere ally, let's just take a step back here and go down the lanes of history to understand what really went down during that period of struggle in 1971, to separate facts from fantasy and ask some straight questions. Number one, could Bangladesh have attained its liberation from Pakistan all by itself? Number two, were the Bangladeshi forces, also known as Mukti Bahini, with 20,000 soldiers and civilians really equipped to handle the conflict on their own? Number three, could the Mukti Bahini have matched the might of the Indian Army, Navy and Air Force that took down the Pakistani forces? Number four, what about the soldiers, almost 93,000 of them under A.A. Khan Niazi, who were taken as prisoners of war? Number five, what about the violence and atrocities unleashed against civilians of Bangladesh? You see, these are all critical questions. For those wondering, here are some facts. You see, the Liberation War was triggered by Pakistan's military crackdown in East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, to suppress a pro-independence movement following the 1970 elections. On December 3, 1971, Pakistan launched airstrikes on Indian air bases, to which the Indian Air Force retaliated by launching airstrikes. You see, geographically, it worked to India's advantage as the snow-capped Himalayas ruled out all the possibility of Chinese help for Pakistan. And the Indian Navy started a move towards Karachi. In the eastern part, the Indian Air Force was assisted by Mukti Bahini, which India took under its wings to train and build internal resistance against Pakistani forces. Thus, all signs telling of the fact that India had formally entered the war. Over the next 13 days, intense war was fought on both the eastern and western fronts. On the final day of the war, that is December 16, Niazi surrendered in front of the Indian commander, Jagjit Singh Arora, by signing what is known as the surrender instrument. This was reportedly called the largest surrender of its kind since World War II, which also begs an important question. Could Bangladesh have managed its victory without crucial diplomatic support internationally? And that's where India comes in again. As the Indian government, led by the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, had lent strong political support for Bangladesh's cause. How was that made possible? Not only did Gandhi extend strong diplomatic support to the Bengali nationalist movement, which sought independence from Pakistan, but she also helped garner international support, including that of the Soviet Unions, for the Bangladeshi cause. By highlighting the human rights violations by the Pakistani military against the Bengali population. This is despite facing diplomatic challenges, particularly from the US and China, who were allies of Pakistan. Not just that, the conflict led to a massive influx of refugees into India, particularly in the states of West Bengal, Assam, Tripura. And what did India do? India provided shelter, food, medical aid to over 10 million refugees, reportedly, which begs another important question. Did the Bangladeshi leaders forget all of this? So do the statements by the Bangladeshi leaders even stand? You see, these are facts out there in the public domain and chronicled in history. And now by deriding or trying to deride India's role in this struggle and trying to reduce it to a mere ally, has Bangladesh cut a rather sorry figure for itself and its freedom fighters. Shifting focus, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government faces its most severe crisis yet, as the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland abruptly resigned in open defiance. Our next report breaking down the dynamics of this turmoil, which of course is also a period linked to Donald Trump's threats of imposing tariffs on its neighbor. Take a look.
Justin Trudeau is facing his most critical moment as a high-stakes rebellion threatens to dismantle his political framework.
It's obviously been an eventful day. It's not been an easy day.
Trudeau's closest ally, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's scathing resignation letter accuses Trudeau of prioritizing costly political gimmicks over confronting Trump's trade tariff threats. The timing couldn't be worse, with Canada's economy on the edge and Trump threatening a 25% tariff. Trudeau's government scrambles for a coherent response. Trudeau's outreach efforts, including last month's high-profile visit to Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, now appear hollow as pressure mounts for decisive action. Canada's opposition parties are united in their call for Trudeau's resignation, intensifying speculation about the government's survival.
The Prime Minister has lost control, yet he clings to power. He's lost control of immigration, lost control of the borders, lost control of spending, deficits, inflation, housing costs.
Trudeau has already weathered 3 no-confidence motions since September, but Freeland's defection strengthens calls for a snap election. The premiers of all 13 provinces meeting in Toronto at the time of her announcement underscored the urgent need for stability and cooperation as the nation faces economic uncertainty.
I have a good relationship with Chrystia over the years. I just want to wish her all the best. But as a country, we have to project strength, unity, and you said the word, I didn't, but I'll repeat it. It's chaos right now up in Ottawa.
Mr. Trump was very clear. He said, if you don't solve your problem with the border on January the 21, I will put 25% tariffs on all exportation from Canada to US.
While Trudeau remains resolute in ruling out resignation, political pressure continues to mount. Each passing hour brings renewed calls questioning his political authority, leaving his leadership hanging by a thread. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In Pakistan's northwestern province, gunmen once again targeted vaccination teams during a campaign against the polio virus. Pakistan has seen a surge in polio cases, recording 63 cases this year compared to 6 in 2023. On Monday, the country launched a week-long house-to-house vaccination campaign. Militants opened fire on the vaccination team. This was in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province's Karak district, killing one police constable and injuring a healthcare worker. Another polio vaccination team came under attack in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Bannu district. Casualties from this incident have not been confirmed. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack. Pakistan and neighboring Afghanistan are the only countries where polio remains an endemic. In fact, Afghanistan has reported at least 23 polio cases in 2024, up from 6 last year. WHO officials have cited multiple factors for the resurgence of polio cases in the two countries. The global body noted the false propaganda that anti-polio campaigns are a Western plot to sterilize Muslim children has led to vaccine boycotts. The vaccination teams in the two countries have frequently come under attack. In September, a policeman guarding a vaccination team was martyred in a firing near a migrant camp in Bannu. Before that, in January, at least 5 police officers were killed. Nearly 24 others were injured after an explosive device targeted their vehicle during a vaccination drive in Bajor, a tribal district in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. And our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik has been monitoring those developments very closely. He sent us this report earlier. Take a look.
Well, at least one policeman has been killed. Another polio worker has been injured in 2 separate incidents of targeted violence against anti-polio drive workers that took place in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the northwestern province in Karak and in Bannu. Now, Bannu is adjacent to the border with Afghanistan. In the attack in Bannu, the number of casualties remains unclear, whereas the attack in Karak is where a policeman lost his life and another polio worker was injured. The incident has been widely condemned. Remember, Pakistan has launched its anti-polio vaccination drive from yesterday, the 16th of December, which will last up until the 22nd of December. Anas Malik in Rawalpindi, Pakistan for WION World is One.
The situation in Gaza continues to be grim, with Israel escalating its attacks on the Palestinian territory. This amid the growing pressure from America to end the war at the earliest. On the other hand, Western governments have been expanding their efforts with the new leadership in Syria. The Israeli military, in fact, has escalated its offensive in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Health Ministry claims at least 45,059 people have been killed during more than 14 months of the war between Israel and Hamas. The families of hostages, on the other hand, are back on the streets of Tel Aviv. They call for a full deal to release the hostages held in Gaza. The families have called on the U.S. to help end the hostage situation.
According to reports by physicians and experts, the hostages are in such a crucial state that it is not clear they will be able to survive another winter in captivity. The hostage situation is a global humanitarian issue, and we call upon the free world, led by the President of the United States, to help finally bring this unbearable situation to an end.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has issued a stern warning to Hamas, saying all hell is going to break loose if the Iran-backed group does not release the Israeli hostages before he takes office. Trump said he had a very good talk with Benjamin Netanyahu about the war in Gaza. During what he called a recap call, Trump reiterated his threat.
On Bibi, we had a very good talk. We discussed what is going to happen, and I'll be very available on January 20th, and we'll see. As you know, I gave warning that if these hostages aren't back home by that date, all hell's going to break out, and very strong.
Reports suggest an Israeli technical team is in Doha to discuss the ceasefire and hostage deal. Adding on to hopes of a truce, a senior Hamas official based in Doha has said that the negotiations are progressing. In Syria, the new rulers have stepped up engagement with countries. The French flag has been raised at the embassy in Damascus for the first time in over a decade. This even as German and French officials are due to meet representatives of Syria's new governing authorities in Damascus, expanding Western contacts with the new administration after British diplomats met its leader, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, late on Monday. HTS is proscribed by several Western governments as a terrorist organization, though it has sought to moderate its rhetoric and pledged to protect the country's religious minorities. The EU will reopen its mission in Syria following talks with its new leadership. The bloc's foreign policy chief has said, describing it as a very important step. Turkey and Qatar, which backed the anti-Assad opposition, have reopened embassies in Damascus. Remember, US President-elect Donald Trump has said, US ally Turkey will hold the key to what happens in Syria next. He called the ouster of al-Assad as an unfriendly takeover by Turkey as he addressed the conflict at a news conference. Our next story talks about what a report says. This is by Israeli non-profit Latet. Nearly 1/3 of Israelis live below the poverty line. Nearly 30% of Israel's population is struggling to make ends meet. That's nearly 2.75 million people we are talking about. Among them are 1.24 million children, almost 40% of the country's youth. For many families, reportedly, food insecurity is a daily battle. The report stating that 34% of Israeli children, over 1 million in total, don't get enough to eat. About 80% of families seeking aid cannot afford enough food, and the toll extends beyond meals. More than 86% of households receiving aid have had to give up on mental health care. Similarly, over 70% avoided buying medicine or seeking medical treatment due to their financial state. Heating homes in winter is also a luxury many cannot afford. About 85% of families supported by non-profits struggle to stay warm. For some, it's even worse. Over 22% had their electricity cut off last year because they could not pay their bills. And this comes as living expenses are only rising fast in Israel. Reportedly, the minimum cost of living for a household of 4 jumped nearly 7% in just 1 year. In 2024, families needed $3,775 per month, an increase of nearly $250 as compared to the previous year. And many reportedly cannot keep up. Nearly 79% of families received aid from non-profits are in debt as compared to nearly 27% of the general population. The poverty crisis has far-reaching effects. Latet's report highlighting a multi-dimensional poverty index which measures deprivation across areas like food, health, housing. Over 22% of Israeli households face significant scarcity in all these areas. Nearly 70% of struggling families have delayed fixing major issues for long periods. Energy poverty is another grim reality. Almost 85% of non-profit supported families cannot regulate temperatures in their homes, whether in summer's heat or winter's cold. As Israel continues to battle on multiple fronts, the plight of its citizens is only getting worse. On to Iran now. The country has paused the implementation of the highly controversial hijab and chastity law. It is a sudden pause and is extremely significant given the backdrop because of the kind of anger, criticism and major backlash that the law has attracted, not just within Iran but across the world as well, over how it sought to intensify the repression of women in Iran. You know what the law was all about? Basically, it proposed stricter penalties for women and girls who fail to fully cover their hair, forearms or lower legs, including fines, longer prison sentences of up to 15 years, and mandatory reporting by businesses. You see, during his presidential campaign, President Masoud Pezeshkian voiced his disapproval of the state's treatment of women regarding the hijab. He promised to respect personal freedoms, and he himself has come under a lot of pressure to scrap the law. The law, like we said, invited massive outrage, and as of now, Iran has backtracked. President Pezeshkian described the legislation as ambiguous and in need of reform, indicating plans to revisit the provisions. You see, what's also happened over the last few days in Iran is that the hijab debate has only intensified following the arrest of a popular singer. Her name is Parastu Ahmadi. You must have come across her name or her story by now. If not, I've got you covered. The singer performed a virtual concert without wearing a hijab. Her subsequent arrest, along with her bandmates, triggered massive anger. They had to be released a day later by the authorities. The Mahsa Amini protests, of course, marked a pivotal chapter in the hijab debate. The death of Amini, a Kurdish Iranian woman, in September 2022, while in custody for allegedly flouting Iran's Islamic dress code, triggered months of massive protests and proved to be the biggest challenge to the Islamic Republic's clerical leaders in decades. In fact, early this year, in March, a fact-finding mission mandated by the United Nations said the death of Mahsa Amini in the custody of Iran's morality police was unlawful and caused by violence, and that Iranian women still suffer systematic discrimination. The investigation established that her death was unlawful and caused by physical violence in the custody of the state authorities. The fact-finding mission found the protests that followed were marked by extrajudicial executions, arbitrary arrests, torture, and ill treatment, as well as rape and sexual violence. Cut to present. As far as the stricter hijab law is concerned, the president of Iran was urged to scrap it. He faced increasing pressure. The new law, after all, would tighten measures against women who defy orders to wear the hijab. As of now, it's a pause in the implementation of the law, but is it a permanent one? And what kind of changes will be made really? Unfortunately, only time will tell. Switching gears, businesses are being urged to take immediate action to address growing climate risks. According to the World Economic Forum, climate hazards like extreme heat could cause billions in losses. Our next report exploring the financial risks and the opportunities that businesses face as they navigate this path when it comes to the evolving climate landscape. Take a look.
The World Economic Forum warns that businesses must act swiftly to address climate risks, or they could face significant financial losses. By 2035, climate hazards like extreme heat could cause up to $610 billion in annual asset losses for listed companies, with sectors such as telecommunications, utilities, and energy being particularly vulnerable. Companies that fail to decarbonize could see their earnings cut by as much as 50% by 2030, driven by stricter climate regulations and carbon pricing. The WEF urges businesses to take immediate steps to build resilience and mitigate risks to safeguard their financial health. The green energy market presents a massive growth opportunity. Set to grow from $5 trillion in 2024 to $14 trillion by 2030. Early movers in sustainable solutions and climate adaptation will gain significant competitive advantages. Key sectors such as alternative energy, sustainable transport, and sustainable consumer products are expected to lead this growth, with alternative energy alone accounting for 49% of the market share. Investing in these areas now offers businesses the chance to capitalize on high-growth markets while addressing climate challenges. Investing in climate adaptation and resilience is not just about risk mitigation, it's also about generating tangible returns. According to research from the Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders, every dollar spent on adaptation could yield up to $19 in avoided losses. This highlights the potential for businesses to not only protect their operations but also enhance long-term value. By strategically addressing climate-related risks and embracing decarbonization, companies can position themselves for growth while contributing to environmental sustainability. Business Bureau, WION, World is One.
On to some potential good news now. Indian tourists may soon be able to travel to Russia without a visa. Reports suggest talks are currently underway between India and Russia to most likely introduce the visa-free travel system as early as the spring of 2025. Let's break it down for you. Indian travelers have already been eligible for e-visas to Russia since August 2023. Currently, Indian passport holders enjoy visa-free travel to a total of 62 countries. And if the talks turn out to be successful, Russia can become a part of that list soon. In a post shared on X on December 13, Russian state media network shared, and I'm quoting, Indians will be able to travel to Russia without a visa from spring 2025, quote unquote. You see, so far, the e-visas, which the Indians are already eligible for traveling to Russia since last year, would reportedly be processed within a few days. And now reports suggest if this new arrangement works out, it would eliminate the need for visas for Indians traveling to Russia altogether. Not just that, it would further strengthen the tourism ties between the two sides. You see, according to reports, just last year, Russia granted 9,500 e-visas to Indian visitors, which was a total of 6% of the total e-visas issued by Moscow. Currently, Russia allows visa-free entry for travelers from China and Iran through its visa-free tourist exchange program. What are the benefits of visa-free travel? Of course, visa-free travel allows individuals to enter a country without obtaining a visa beforehand. And this speeds up and smoothens the entire travel process. On to India, where Indore now aspires to be beggar-free. The city is taking an extreme measure, in fact, to ensure its streets are free of beggars. From January 1 onwards, Indore District Administration will start registering FIRs against anyone who gives money to beggars. You see, Indore is one of the 10 cities selected by the Indian government for a pilot project to eliminate begging. By discouraging alms giving, the city's administration hopes to break the cycle of begging and provide sustainable solutions for those in need. Authorities plan to conduct an awareness campaign this month to educate the public about the negative impact of giving alms. The administration has recently exposed various begging gangs in the city which exploit the poor and the needy.
देखिए, लगातार ये हमारी कोशिश जारी है और शहर को भिक्षुक मुक्त बनाने की दिशा में सभी विभाग पूरी तरीके से संजीदगी से लगे हुए हैं और आपके माध्यम से मैं सभी शहरवासियों से अपील करता हूं कि कृपया इस बात में भागीदार ना बने। और जैसा आपने कई सारे न्यूज के माध्यम से देखा भी होगा कि संबंध में गैंग हमेशा काम करता रहता है। कई सारे लोग गलत इंटेंशंस के साथ में दूसरों से भिक्षावृत्ति कराते हैं, तो हम लोग इसमें भागीदार ना बने और कृपया किसी को भिक्षा न दें, जिससे कि हम लोग इंदौर को बहुत जल्दी पूरी तरीके से भिक्षावृत्ति से मुक्त करा सकें।
It was in July this year, the Indore District Administration announced that giving alms or buying products from children is a crime. The crackdown on beggars began in February this year after a woman was caught in the city for enforcing begging onto her children. Authorities found that she had accumulated a plot of land, a two-story house, a motorcycle, and a smartphone, reportedly through begging. Your favorite chocolate could soon leave a bitter taste in your mouth. Well, not literally, but only because it could cost more. Because cocoa prices have hit a new record high. Cocoa futures have reached an all-time high of over $11,900 per ton, with prices almost tripling since the start of 2024. This dramatic spike is driven by a continuing supply crisis in West Africa, the world's largest cocoa-producing region. The region's harvests have been plagued by weak crops, adverse weather, and the threat of crop diseases, resulting in a third consecutive year of supply shortages. And as a result, chocolate manufacturers are being forced to pass on the higher cost to the consumers. Despite improvements in the main crop harvest, the outlook for the mid-crop, which typically starts in April, has worsened. Heavy rainfall and intensifying Harmattan winds have damaged farms, limiting the possibility of rebuilding global cocoa stockpiles. And as a result, the cocoa market is now expected to end the current season with a global deficit, reversing the earlier predictions of a surplus. This shift, combined with the rising cost of holding cocoa positions and lower liquidity in the futures market, has increased the price volatility, with the number of open positions dropping to a decade low. The soaring cocoa prices are not only the result of supply issues, but also structural challenges within the cocoa industry, like crop diseases, low wages for farmers. While new cocoa trees require several years to mature, any increase in production remains out of reach for the immediate future. The ongoing supply shortfall has led to a sharp rise in prices, with cocoa futures expected to exceed $12,000 per ton. And as a result, chocolate manufacturers may either face higher costs or resort to using alternative ingredients to maintain the profit margins. For consumers, this could mean pricier chocolate products or less cocoa in their favorite treats. On to the world of sport now. There is no doubt as to who India's most valuable player is at the moment. It is Jasprit Bumrah. The pacer, in fact, has been starring for India with the ball during the Border Gavaskar Trophy. But today, he did so with the bat as well. India began the day 4 of the Brisbane Test on 51 for 4. Captain Rohit Sharma was the first to depart. KL Rahul displayed his quality with a top score of 84, anchoring India's innings. The tourists seemed to be in a decent position when Nitish Kumar Reddy and Ravindra Jadeja shared a crucial 53-run partnership for the 7th wicket. But once Jadeja's wicket fell, it all came down to number 10 and number 11 batsmen to score 33 runs in order to avoid the follow-on with just one wicket in hand. Jasprit Bumrah and Akashdeep stepped up to the challenge. They collected plenty of doubles, batted rather responsibly, something which the fans expected their top-order batsmen to really do. Akashdeep, meanwhile, took on the risks when needed, and vice-captain Bumrah played supportive and mentoring role for his fellow pacer, and together they dug deep, took India past the 246-run mark. By the time bad light forced an early end to the day's play, India were at 252 for 9. Bumrah is not out on 10. That is more than Virat Kohli and as many as Rohit. Akashdeep will resume on 27, which is more than what Shubman Gill, Kohli and Rohit had scored combined. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks for watching.
In a year that reshaped the world, 2024 brought seismic shifts, bold moves, and unforgettable moments that will echo through history around the globe. Wars continued to ravage nations, but new alliances and power shifts began to rewrite the rules of geopolitics. 2024 also bore witness to nature's fury. Climate change fueled deadly wildfires, devastating floods, and unprecedented storms. Devastating wars to technological revolutions. 2024 was the year that changed everything. The Game Changers 2024. The year that reshaped our future. Only on WION. World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects